Nakaba, I beg you, please spare them! What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do into... Have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. Here's another fun fact. This chapter is solid. It's solid. It's meaty. It raises some questions, lays out some philosophies, some ideas. But ultimately, I disagree with a lot of them. Or at least a lot of them from one singular individual. But of course, we have a whole chapter to cover. So let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into chapter 186, Nasiens versus Diodora. Let's address the cover page real quick. Look at Tura's face, gang. You can always tell that Tura was a hater from round start, dog. Look at his face. He's like, I could be a better baby. If you would just hold me. Uncle Mortlock. Don't call me uncle. You're not my kid. You're not Arjet's kid. Yes, Lord Mortlock. And I wrote this, man, Diodora. Once surrounded by love and connections, or at least some love and some connections, all taken away, leading to a worldview that I personally don't agree with. But let's hop right into chapter 186, Nasiens versus Diodora. Ready for the second battle, folks. It's showtime. Gladiators, make your way to the arena now. Oh, it feels so good. I'm sorry, it feels so good. I called it. Oh, the phone? Did someone pick it up? Did I call it? I'm sorry, I said it. But with it being the case, Captain D announces, ready for the second battle, folks. It's showtime. Gladiators, make your way to the arena now. And of course, you know, the whole crowd's going wild and crazy, but I'm scared. Because, like, here's the thing. From the moment we saw the bracket, everybody in they mama, I can't even say this is just a me prediction thing, everybody in they mama kind of read the whole thing. The only things that are kind of up in the air is whether it's ballin'. Like, it is straight ballin'. We all knew that Percy was going to win and make it to finals. We all knew that ultimately Anne and Donnie and Mystery Package, or Dubs, whatever you want to call them, and Nasi, we all know they were going to lose. So now the real question is what's going to be the result of the Gawain versus Ballin matchup? Is Gawain actually going to defeat Ballin, or is Ballin going to defeat Gawain? And also, is Nasiens going to die? Because obviously, we need Percy versus Diodora. That kind of has to happen. I almost smell like a 3-fight multi-arc run throughout the series, where Percy gets a dub, then Diodora gets a dub, and then they have a final battle, which determines everything. Once again, it does actually seem, while I was once concerned for the length of this series, it seems like Nakaba is going to make this thing thick and hefty. We haven't gotten Lance back. We haven't seen all the other sacred treasures. We still have a whole bunch more of Arthur himself to explore as an antagonist. Obviously, we have the 4 evils as antagonists with Damon's reveal last chapter. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff going on. And we're 186 chapters deep. For reference, I believe the original sevendeadlysins manga is 346 chapters long. And then they're like, no, I think it's actually 370. But regardless, we're halfway there. We are halfway through the original run of the sevendeadlysins manga here now by chapter 186. And for reference, around this time, Melius had already died and had been resurrected, I'm quite sure. We're already at post-resurrection Meliodas at this current timing in the sevendeadlysins run. And right now, we have been in time skip for a while, but we still need to collect the rest of the knights. We need to get them their weapons. We need to still have more matchups with the 4 evils. Like, there's so much going on. So I actually wouldn't be shocked if this series does hit like the 500 chapter count because of how much is being set up. And thusly, I'm setting all this up to say the other big variable. If we know that Nasiens will lose, but the question is, will they die? I'm personally leaning towards no, and of course, you know I'm biased because I love Nasiens. Nasiens is still one of my favorite characters that Fortnite has produced so far. But also because it feels a little weird. Like, Nakaba, it wouldn't be the first time Nakaba has introduced a character, given them a unique power, and then immediately off them. Like, it wouldn't be the first time, but Nasiens is a bit too major of a character. Like, and also, they're the sole representative, the sole legacy character to represent King and Diane. Obviously, we have Gawain representing Escanor and Merlin. We have Tristan representing Elizabeth and Meliodas. I don't know why Meliodas' name left me. And we have Lance representing Bon and Elaine. And of course, we have Gother just representing himself because he's here. But with it being the case, getting rid of Nasiens will be getting rid of a legacy character, or a representation of 2 very important legacy characters in Diane and King. And while Nakaba has gall, Nakaba has nerve, I don't see that happening. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think he has that much gall, that much nerve. Especially considering he just introduced the Spirit Spear. Like, not even 10 weeks ago, we just got introduced to the Spirit Spear. And introducing that, showing us 2 forms of it, and setting up the idea that it could grow, and then not only that, but giving us connection to one of the deities of this universe in the Sacred Tree. Doing all that just to offer him randomly in this round 2 match against Diodora doesn't seem likely. But at the same time, the one thing I don't want, even if this match is interrupted and Nasiens gets saved by the end in order to make sure Diodora doesn't catch that body, I don't want the tournament to end prematurely. I do want to see the rest of the tournament. There's still a bunch of interesting matchups to come up. Whether it is just Ballin versus Gawain, Big Ballin versus Big Gawain. Whether it is Percy versus Diodora. Whether it is Tristan versus Ballin. Or Tristan versus Gawain. Like, there are so many things that are still set up well for this tournament that I do want to see them run. But at the same time, I don't know. Could Nakaba do it? Absolutely. Will he do it? I don't think so. But, of course, we see that Nasiens isn't worried about the match ahead and isn't even worried about the order to gather into the arena. They're worried about one thing. I'm concerned about Dubs. Oh! I ripped the eraser out of the pencil. But I'm concerned about Dubs. They took him away and all. And Percy admits, funny enough that you mentioned that. That's the weird thing. Oh? The group that took him undid his bonds and went on without him. I'm not sure why, but he's good for now. I think? Which is interesting. Notably, Percy has sort of had a clairvoyance. Not necessarily absolute clairvoyance, like he doesn't see everything at all, but at least from Percy's previous knowledge of things that happened over the time skip, knowledge of our characters' developments, and even comments he makes that he clearly shouldn't have been able to make unless he was somehow able to get a whole bunch of information while he was sleeping. He seems to be deeply connected with light spirits. So I thought it kind of worked like the Rinnegan users in Naruto, where their line of sight, their eyes are on everything that their summons and the fellow other outer paths are on. So Pain, whenever he summoned the animals, could see through their eyes. So I thought that's kind of what happened here with Percy, because this is clearly a case of Percy reading the light spirits, not necessarily the magic. But in this case, he's reading the light spirits, but he couldn't tell it was Gowther. Now, obviously, it was revealed last chapter that Percy cannot perceive or interact with Gowther because Gowther doesn't have any light spirits, as he's not a traditional living being. But at the same time, if he could view information based on the perception of the light spirits in an area, he should have been able to tell what happened. But clearly he doesn't know what happened here. So it does limit Percy's clairvoyance a bit more, which I think is interesting. I am glad that there are ways that Percy's, seemingly enough, omniscience can be worked around. And I like that it does come with this ongoing set of mystery. And of course, while we know as readers Dubs is safe, obviously our cast and crew not knowing that is very, very interesting. And once again, I'm assuming Dubs just went back to the ship. Like he's going to be fine. He still needs to make more sacred treasures. But with it being the case, we see that there isn't enough time for that. There's enough time for discussion of Dubs and stuff like that. There's a certain someone, Aura Farms, as they stroll up. Hey, can we get this started? And once again, let me say something. If you ever, and I mean ever, see someone smile at you like this, run. Whatever they said, whatever they did, it's not worth it. They have malicious intentions. There's nothing positive that comes out of a smile like that. The fact that he's eager, the fact that he's itching and scratching, he's like, can we get this started? No. I'd be paranoid as all get out, generally. If someone looked at me like this, and was like, come on, come into the ring with me. Don't worry. And you know for a fact the audience ain't protected. You know your life is forfeit here, gang. Like, I'd surrender right now. Right now. I would surrender right now. No. Especially considering, like, Nasiens. Buddy. Pal, you know Percy's got that. You know Percy's got that 1v1. But with that being the case, we see that Nasiens does decide to stand on business. As Diodora walks out ahead of them, Nasiens says, oh, see you later. And Percy says, good luck. Only to immediately hit the ... Because obviously, even if Percy couldn't tell exactly what happened with Diodora, he could put two and two together. Like he knows that Diodora caught some bodies. And very likely has magic that he shouldn't, especially by his outfit. So Percy, he's automatically worried for their homie. And one thing I will have to say, Nasiens, and all my nurseable shippers out there, you know that all Nasiens is a homie. But with it being the case, we see that the battle gets announced. Block A, second round, second battle. Nasiens versus Diodora. And I'll have to admit, I'm not sure what it is about this panel, or this page in general, but these are some really good drawings by Nakaba. And I do like the seriousness in both of their eyes. While Nasiens is definitely more relaxed a bit, you can see Diodora's intense focus of like, ooh, I'm about to catch her. Oh, I'm about to catch a body. Like you can tell they're feeding for it. They're feeding for it. And I like that. I like how you can tell both are going into this battle with serious desires and serious intentions, but there is malice and direct hatred in one of them. But of course, that lack of malice may come to matter more than we knew from this initial panel. As we see, the couple of declares, "Let the fight begin!" And we see we see Diodora draw out the blade. And Anne immediately notices, "Hey, is it me or..." And Boris goes, "What? Anything you need, baby girl." And Anne says, "Like, he seems totally different from when we fought before." And it's not just the fit, as we'll see. There is a whole different level of combat from Diodora. As Nasiens ups both blades, big moving, big CNs. You know what I do wonder, though? I wonder if the blades can be imbued with the transformation effects of the gloves. We know he can raise temperatures and lower them drastically. I wonder if he could, like, make an ice blade and make a flame blade. And we know he can already coat his magic. We know he can coat his magic, which is poison mixer, on top of his blade. So I wonder, can he coat the magic, then grab them and reinforce it? So essentially making a flaming Henbane and Belladonna. Possibly. Like, what would that do? I wonder. But with that being the case, Nasiens does draw both blades and both lunge in. And we see that they do go relatively even, with Diodora swinging a bit more wildly with a lot less precision than he did before. Even if you'll remember back in the Anne fight before Diodora was merely getting viciously violated, they were actually going relatively even in terms of technical skill. And now don't get me wrong, Nasiens has definitely been noted to be a prodigy. They never got any real professional sword training because their grandfather who raised them was Ordo. And then, obviously, it doesn't seem like Dolores would have been much of a fighter, and obviously the fairies around them probably weren't dual sword wielders, but Nasiens has been noted to be technically skilled, but clearly from Diodora's change in attitude, not just the fighting style, but also their expressions, they're fighting a little bit strangely, going, yeah, spread it for me, Nasiens. And we see that Nasiens like, I don't want to bust it open for you. Just because I like your brother doesn't mean I like you. And we see that Edlin is immediately concerned. He's being pushed back! But Kion, of all characters, is like, I'm not so sure. Which, you know, I'll admit, I've grown to like Kion a whole lot. I love seeing him glaze other characters that's not named Tristan, bro. I want to see him glaze more. I want to see him glaze Percy. I want to see him glaze Gawain. I want to see him glaze Lance. I want to see him glaze more people. Because Kion, I'll admit, he's a tier 1 glazer. He's a D1 glazer. He may be heading to the glaze league, gosh darn it. Whenever he be glazing good. Because he doesn't just do a 1-part glaze. He doesn't just hit the, I'm not sure. We see Nasiens does actually clear the interaction with a slash on Diodora's finger. And Kion hits the second part of the glaze by saying, it looks like he's taking pure desperation tactics to me. Which is interesting. Notably, I wouldn't read desperation from this. I would read a lack of regard. Like, how do I put this? You ever been able to tell when someone has something devious, not even devious, but you ever been able to tell when someone's hiding something from you? Like, I don't know, it varies from person to person, but whenever, like, I have 3 friends I'm thinking of at the time I don't piece. If they're more smiley than usual, and they're laughing a lot, I'm not saying that they don't smile and laugh, but if it's more than usual, like my average amount, I know they're hiding something. Of course, it's never malicious. They're my friends. They haven't betrayed me yet, gosh darn it. But I'm able to tell that something different is up. And I feel the same thing with Diodora here. They're so excited. They're so gleeful. They're swinging wildly. I wouldn't say it's desperation tactics. I say that's a lack of regard, almost as if they know they're not in any real danger, which is what we know is the case for Diodora. But it is very interesting for kind to read it as desperation tactics. But with it being the case, Diodora sees the cut and is shocked. And of course, Cavalini declares, first blood is drawn by Nasiens. And then we see that Anne says, no, this is weird. He wasn't this sloppy when we fought at all. Which is funny, because she says this sloppy, which implies that she's still... She still thinks Diodora was actually a bit sloppy while fighting her, which, I mean, does make sense. Once again, Diodora never really had any real combat experience and was his actual first real fight, presumably. Rothus and Turret did everything for him previously. So it's funny that she still thinks he was sloppy, but not this sloppy, not this careless, not this reckless. This is strange. And we see that Donnie himself admits, hey, is this too easy for him, or does he just not care? And, of course, this is some, like, indirect downplay to my glorious, legendary, amazing Nasiens, but at the same time, it is nice that even Donnie, who we know is a skilled combatant, right? Like, Donnie, he definitely has been more, joke characterified than he was previously, but still, he is a really good combatant. He is well trained with a dagger, and he has 2 more years of experience exploring and battling in Camelot. So, like, he's a good fighter, and for him to be like, huh, yeah, something is genuinely up here, that does go to show how much Diodora has essentially lowered the bar. But of course, we know it's all intentional, and they smile to look towards Nasiens, expecting the damage to be healed from themselves and reflected onto them, only for Nasiens to turn around, both blades drawn in at the ready, and no visible damage done. Now, of course, Diodora may have had a slight inkling of confusion, and thinking, well, maybe it's just hidden, because they were slashed on the finger, and of course Nasiens is wearing gloves. But you can tell by Nasiens' stance here that they didn't actually take any damage, and it's not just the stance, but also the fact that the blood still drips down their hand. And you can see Diodora's genuine confusion as they say, this didn't transfer over? Perhaps this magic hasn't fully sunken in yet. So, obviously, this is a fat, thick, juicy, scrumdiddlyumptious, hefty, and I mean hefty nerf to Diodora's magic round start. We'll see it work later, but right here, right now, it does not work. Now, if I had to theorize why, it is the intent, not just the reflection. So, I mentioned last week's review, that Damon has a very similar ability in Boruto, where ultimately, if you have any negative intention towards them, it gets reflected automatically. And notably, there were extra stipulations added on it, like the palm has to be touching you, but even then, we see in other instances that he's not making physical contact, and the attack still gets reflected anyway. So Damon's ability is infinitely more broken. The damage reflection that Damon has, more broken than this one, mainly because I think, since Nasiens was actively defending themselves and only attacked in offense, with no negative intent, simply to strike defensively, the damage didn't reflect. Because remember how both Turret and Rothus attacked Diodora. It was intentional malice directed towards him. So Rothus choked him out, and Turret, bang, 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 bang. So that damage got reflected, because it was malice towards Diodora. Since this was purely defensive, Nasiens didn't trigger the magic. It's almost like, this is gonna sound crazy. It's the difference between a first degree, life-taking charge and manslaughter. There's intention behind one, there is an intention behind another. And it looks like Diodora's magic responds specifically to intention. And obviously there could be extra stipulations on top of this. Based on what happens later on in the chapter, it could be the case that Diodora's magic only responds if you have negative feelings towards Diodora themselves. Essentially, Diodora may just have to rage bait you for the magic to activate at all. And if that's the case, then Diodora's magic is kind of butt. Because there are numerous characters in this universe who either can attack with no bloodlust at all, or just typically strike normally. And once again, we still don't know the upper limits of Diodora's magic. This is just the first bit of it. There are characters in this universe that could hypothetically vaporize him. Like straight wholesale vaporize him. So I'm interested to see how Diodora's abilities evolve and react and attack. But of course, as Diodora is talking to themselves, noting how it didn't reflect, and the possibility that the magic hasn't sunk fully in yet, and they get plotting and rubbing their hands together all nice and devious, we see that Nasiens says, Would you mind telling me something? And Diodora turns, shocked and wondering why, or wondering what. And notably, this is the most pathetic Diodora has looked, pathetic and sincere Diodora has looked since they awakened their magic, which hasn't been that long. But we see that Nasiens points out the obvious. Rothus used that leather armor and short sword when I fought him, and Turret sported that flute as he fought Gawain, didn't he? Why do you have them now? So obviously Nasiens notice things are looking a little bit devious. And just remember, Nasiens is the only person who knows that Turret and Rothus are just dead. They're gone from this mortal coil, but their magical abilities still remain. And obviously with Diodora now stealing the fit, there's certain things starting to click in Nasiens' head. And now, admittedly, I do definitely wish Nasiens had put things together a little bit quicker and didn't play with Diodora, because there's a very likely possibility that Nasiens could have immediately won this round start if he just summoned the Spirit Spear in its first form, tackled Diodora off the stage, and then dunked him down. Because remember, the main issue with Diodora right now is the same issue he had previously. He doesn't have range. And of course, he's going to work around that with the 2 magics he acquired later on in this very chapter. But Nasiens actually could have pretty easily won this fight, I think. Because once again, Diodora needs to take damage to invoke his magic. Even if you were to say hypothetically that the Sponge Percival push off the arena would have counted as malice, it wouldn't have done any damage. It's Sponge Percival. It doesn't really attack you. It's like the teddy bear, which admittedly though the teddy bear can get vicious and violent with you and restrain you. But still, restraint isn't damage. We know it is specifically damage reflection from Diodora's magic. It is not manipulation reflection. So there are some abilities in fiction that if you do something to your opponent, it will immediately do it back to you. Whether that's move their hand, your hand will then move. But Diodora's is damage reflection. And of course, Nasiens doesn't know any of this. We know some of this. And Diodora's like, oh. I have something to show you. And they immediately hit the hand signs to activate Gatekeeper. And Diodora does at least give Nasiens the dignity of answering as they say, because I need them. And Gatekeeper opens wide up. And Nasiens is, of course, shocked to see it, and they have to leap back away from the miasma of Purgatory. Now, this is unfortunate. I was definitely hoping that Nasiens would, like, maybe try to soak up a little bit of it this time, but they didn't soak it up previously, so I guess it makes sense that Nasiens simply cannot interact with the Purgatory poison, or they simply are too scared to try. But not only is Nasiens bamboozled, not only is Percy bamboozled, they say, no way! But even Beltreep himself leans forward in his gamer chair and is like, do my masked eyes deceive me? Am I genuinely tweaking right now? That's not his magic. And we see that Capelloni announces for everyone to hear, this is the Gatekeeper magic, a magic wielded by Rothus. What could possibly be going on here? And of course, this is Capelloni acting, but I do wonder if Gothar has any idea? Like, presumably not, though. He hasn't interacted with Diodora at all, so I bet he doesn't even realize the full threat that Diodora may eventually end up posing. But with that being the case, Diodora does give us an explanation of Rothus's clothes along with Turt's flute. As he explains, Rothus's armor and sword are magic, built to withstand the miasma of Purgatory. The flute of his partner Turret is much the same. So, it was set up previously when he stole their magic anyway, and obviously Rothus was able to stand in the Purgatory miasma. That is interesting. There are clothes, but then again, maybe they were made from Purgatory beasts? Because we know the clothes that Bon and Meliodas wore while in Purgatory were made from the skin of Purgatory beasts, who are obviously adapted to the environment, and thusly they didn't decay. So I do wonder if they aren't actually magic, but made of, Purgatory beast fibers. Entirely possible, but them being magic is interesting. I wonder who made them, because obviously, Ironside didn't have that magic. Well, it didn't have that magic. Neither did Turret or Rothus, so I do genuinely wonder who made the magic clothes for him. And I wonder how many there are, how many are in production, considering traveling to Purgatory, or at least interacting with Purgatory, is much more common in Camelot. But with it being the case, we see Nasiens, admittedly, not putting 2 and 2 together, not clicking things together, as they say, how did you get their magic? What happened to the Nasiens? They're dead. Come on, gang. Come on, like Nasiens, they're dead. Like Percy told you this. Like we were there, Nasiens. You know this. I mean, like maybe he's just asking for the shock of the moment, but Nasiens, gang ready. Like you know they're dead. Come on, let's not play these games, Nasiens. But with it being the case, Diodora's like, well, shoot, we're an envoy. It doesn't matter. Our life's a forfeit. We're nothing but trash to play against each other for the great lord and the great king of this realm. I killed them, and I took it from them. Which is crazy. Nasiens, you fighting a beast, dog. Diodora decided to look mad ominous. And I've been seeing a lot of the community, they've been, let's just say they've been appreciating Diodora's character design a whole lot. They feeling certain types of way about him. And while I don't get that, I do love how Nakaba is able to take this rather soft and very, gentle looking character and make them look extremely ominous and have them say such ominous things. The flip for Diodora is fantastic. And one thing I'll give Nakaba, because I've seen debate about this, a lot of people are talking about now, is it too soon? Should we have gotten more time with Diodora before we flipped him into this super evil and, as we'll see, very, let's just say, inhuman human guy and presumable major antagonist? But I do think we got just enough of Diodora. He was sprinkled out throughout the narrative enough that I think this flip hits because we know original Diodora well enough. And it helps that we did get a whole chapter dedicated to this flip and even got a whole cliffhanger dedicated to him losing his life. It all makes sense. Of course, though, there still is the strangeness of the shift and what that implies for Diodora. But with it being the case, we see that Nasiens is shocked and bamboozled, and of course, Gawain is like, wait, He took his victim's magic force? Notably, Percy doesn't have a comment, but Nasiens declares, You killed your own companions? You've lost your mind. Weren't those two cherished friends to you? And, Nasiens, gangaroni. Cherished friends? They were co-workers at best. Nasiens. And notably, Diodora could explain what happened, but I do like the mix of character perspective, right? Since Nasiens doesn't know what Rothus and Turret were planning to do to Diodora, he makes the natural assumption. He saw them traveling together, he saw them seemingly having a good rapport, he saw Turret and Rothus risking everything for Diodora in their fights, so he makes that natural assumption. But realistically, Diodora killed them with his magic, but that's after they tried to kill him. Like, I mentioned earlier the idea of manslaughter versus life taken intentionally, but this truly is a case of like old-fashioned self-defense. They were trying to kill him. They failed. His magic absorbed theirs. It's kind of fair game. Like it's crazy to say it like that, but ultimately Diodora's not in the wrong here. Obviously he's going to be in the wrong for intentionally trying to take Nasiens' life later in the chapter. But like, in terms of taking Rothus and Turret and what they had to offer him, Diodora kind of did the right thing. I ain't gonna lie to you. But with that being the case, we see Diodora saying, oh, you simpleton. How dare you question me? He who was chosen by the heavens. I wish you wouldn't lecture others like that. It's all this world's fault. The world that took it all from me. Affection, yearning, friendship, trust, each and every type of hope. Let me get to the full speech. Invocation, ooze. Oh, it's all oozing everywhere. We see a beast fly through the portal as they're invoked. An attack from another space has struck Nasiens. Whoa, for real? It can't be. And just look at the hideous monsters in the arena now. This is invocation, Turret's magic at work. So, we see that Diodora's like, you really have no room to talk. You shouldn't be talking that way. And you know what? Once again, a bit, you gotta spin a little bit like Nasiens. You're making a lot of assumptions, gang. You're making a lot of assumptions. Your friends, cherished companions, beloved home. You're making a fat chunk of assumptions. But with it being the case, that's not the main thing I want to point out just yet, because I want to get through the rest of his speech before I start breaking it down and what I agree with, what I disagree with. But these two look familiar to you? Do they? Well, if they don't worry. It's been a while since we've seen them. But these two are actually the same beasts that were around, and I believe, was it Diodora's introduction, or was it a little bit later? I think it was actually a little bit after Diodora's introduction. So remember, we cliffhanger ended on Diodora's face as a reveal for the end of a chapter. But these are the same winged tiger beast, the Chimera, and the big snake thing that we saw way back when in part 1. They seem to have grown bigger and much more vicious now that they're under the current Diodora's control. Now, obviously, that could just be the passage of time. They may have been cubs and much younger when Diodora was first officially playing with them. But to see them get called back and see them be the two beasts that Diodora chooses to summon, that does imply one thing to me. Even though Diodora has drastically changed, has drastically evolved, has become something completely different and much more beastly than he was before, the original Diodora, the Diodora that had care and connections, is still in there. Because he summons these beasts in particular. Who knows what he could have summoned? He could have summoned Hawk and Wild, probably. Though, admittedly, as people pointed out, Hawk and Wild were out of Purgatory by the end of Cursed by Light. But then again, technically, I guess they could just leave. Because, like, notably, it was the Demon King who guarded the portal to the mortal realm. Now that he's dead, I guess they could just go back and forth. But essentially, Hawk and Wild could be in Purgatory right now or not. Like, that is actually kind of debatable on where the heck they are. We haven't seen them. But they should be two of the strongest characters in the verse right now, while also being anywhere and everywhere. But he could have summoned them, two goats, but he summons these two in particular. And I don't think this is just a visual callback on Nakaba's part, being like, hey, you remember Diodora's old creatures? I think this is Nakaba telling us that the original Diodora is still in there. He is a fundamentally different character now with a much more different mindset. But at the same time, it's still Diodora, which I think is important to establish when you change a character so much. Because once again, this is not the Diodora we have. We didn't get much of them, but what we got of them defined a completely different character. And it's nice to see these evolved creature designs from Nakaba. Once again, Nakaba cooks on all levels artistically. Like, he's a monster, a beast, and a demon with a pen. Do not sleep on Nakaba Suzuki. But with it being the case, we see that ultimately the attack was actually blocked by Nasiens, who retreated to the air. But look how Nasiens is already huffing and puffing. But Nasiens has fully blocked them with his giant Percival statue. Spirit Chassis will first form Sponge Percival. I'll admit, I'm still not the hugest fan of not seeing the Spirit Spear. If I had to rank it amongst all the Spirit Spears that we've seen so far, it's probably my least favorite. But then again, we've only seen 2 forms for it, and I really, really like the Spirit Spears. And I like the individuality of the Spirit Spears, so I think that's why I'm not the biggest fan of the Spirit Chastable. First form, Percival, and stuff like that. And second form, the Percival Spear. I'm not the biggest fan of it, if only for the fact that it just feels so non-unique. It feels like Nakaba's really dragging the Percy design. And, like, don't get me wrong, maybe if it was one or the other, I'd be fine with it. Like, if one of them had a reference to Percy, but it seems like all the Spirit Spear forms of Nasiens will have a reference to Percy, which is kind of, I mean, it's fine. Nasiens loves Percy. We're even going to address that in this chapter. But it does, like, limit it. I don't know. I'm still not the biggest fan of it. But, of course, it is nice to see the Spirit Spear actively being used and actually tank an attack. But we see that Diodora begins to continue their speech. You too. You will understand soon enough. You will see that there is no hope to be found in this world. In the end, all of mankind is alone. Now, I do want to break this out a little bit. Diodora is kind of right in one sense. There is a fun little fact that you may not realize. You, and only you, will be born into your body. And you, and only you, will leave this mortal coil from your body. So in the sense that you will be born and die alone, that is technically true. Diodora is in fact spitting on that front. However, big capital H, however, he's wrong by his own admission. He literally says himself, affection, yearning, friendship, trust, each and every type of hope. Like, buddy, you acknowledge that those are types of hope. And you acknowledge that they exist. Meaning, by proxy, there is hope in this world. It's just not permanent. I think if he were to say there is no true, everlasting hope in this world, that would be one thing. And the reason I would like that is because it would play into the idea of Camelot. Because remember, Camelot is meant to be this everlasting, immortal, eternal dream kingdom. Which is interesting because people can still age and die in here. But regardless, that is very interesting. But we see that the Purgatory beasts lunge in and the Sponge Percival lunges in as well. Notably, it doesn't regenerate. But why, Nakaba? Why was glacier creatures? Why does the mouth have the mouth? Tongue thing, it's so nasty. But with it being the case, I don't agree with Diodora on that part. I do believe there is hope in this world, as he himself acknowledges, and there are many different types of hope. You can gather hope from almost anything. You know what I gather hope from? I gather hope from the fact that I will be able to eat. Like, I don't know. I'm a big eater guy. Like, obviously not just because I'm big. It's literally just because I love to eat. I love food. So I always hold hope that I'm going to be able to cook something. I'm going to be able to eat something. I'm going to be able to nibble on something. And even that, technically, that yearning for food, that is hope. And it exists. It isn't permanent. After I eat and I'm super full, I don't want to eat anymore. But still, I don't know. But with it being the case, we see that Diodora essentially begins to spit their new philosophy in totality. No matter how much you feel for someone, no matter how much you want them to feel for you, it will never come across. Which is also wrong. Like, that's just incorrect. Because we've seen characters feel for each other. Diodora, you felt for your father. You yearned for him. It's just that he lost everything. And then you lost everything. So I think Diodora, while I get their rationalization for it, and this philosophy somewhat makes sense based on the life they lived, they've kind of dove off the deep end a little bit too far. And now they're saying things that just don't even make sense. Because, like, gang, people can acknowledge how much people feel for one another. Will they be able to fully understand it? No, I do agree in the sense that, like, I love and care for my friends deeply. Will they ever know how much I love and care for them deeply? No, because they aren't me. So, technically, maybe if Diodora is speaking in that sense, it makes sense. But in terms of generally speaking, people can know you care for them. People can know you love them. That's kind of the whole point of saying, I love you, I care for you. Like, you're able to transmit that freely. But it looks like Diodora's experiences with his loss of his family and the uncle in Mortlock, with the loss of his father through the hands of Chaos, and through Turret and Rothus' betrayal, now he's completely given up on connection. Now he's just this endless cesspool. But of course, it generally makes you wonder, well, what's your end goal now? What's your point? You're just going to run around slaughtering people and collecting magic for yourself? Like, with this new philosophy that Diodora has, I'm wondering what he plans his future to be. Is it just going to be a never-ending cycle of suckage? And not like freaky suckage, but kind of freaky suckage, where you just go around slaughtering people and taking their magic? Then for what? Do you plan to change the world yourself? Do you want to be, like, the next vessel of chaos? Like, Diodora, what is your end goal now? Because it is an interesting philosophy you undertaken, but I'm going to need some more substance, especially considering, I think, in the grand scheme of things, what you speak is but a lie. A false dream of sorts. But, with it being the case, we see Diodora also notes something that we as the fan base have known for a while, even if they haven't really acknowledged it all too much. And I know you're in love with that green-haired young man, aren't you? Those feelings, too, are just a fantasy, doomed to never be rewarded. And you know what? Well, I disagree with a lot of what he's saying. He's kind of right. Once again, I don't think, despite how many, because like, I have a couple friends who are Nurseville shippers who are like, Nurseville needs to happen, Nurseville be canon, Nurseville canon. I'm like, come on now. We know Panda's canon. We know Panda's happening. So, ultimately, I do actually agree with Diodora there. It is very unlikely that Percival will ever actually end up returning Nasiens' love for him. Just because, you know, I mean, unless Percy goes the multi-partner route, it's just likely not going to happen. So, Diodora actually is kind of spitting there. But with it being the case, we see that Diodora invokes the blush from Nasiens because like, oh, how dare you tell me that I obviously love Percy? And they say, that's not true at all. But, of course, Diodora says, why not? Once you die, it's all over anyway. Everything just fades away. You know that. That's why I'll kill you. And the one you pine for as well. So, that is, once again, a difference in philosophy kind of thing. I get what Diodora means in terms of the idea of an eternal love, an eternal happiness, an eternal connection. At least in our world, and presumably even in the Seven Deadly Sins world, nothing is truly eternal. Except for Bon, I guess, when he was immortal. But, like, nothing is truly eternal. Even the very universe we exist in, at least according to all known science, will eventually die. There will be a heat death of the universe, or a big crunch, or a big freeze, whatever you want to call it. There are a bunch of different theories. Take your pick. Essentially, all scientists agree that the universe will end one day. So it's temporary. Even if it lasts a long time, it's temporary. But does that mean it doesn't have value? I don't think so. Same thing with life. Same thing with connections. Same thing with bonds. I was having a conversation a while ago with a friend. A long while ago now. It was about the idea of love. And does love even have value if it's impermanent? And I was talking to him like, yeah, it does. Because you can't love everybody. You can't hold a deep personal, interpersonal love for everybody. In fact, it is the temporary nature of that love that gives it such extreme value. The fact that you can dedicate yourself wholesale to somebody, and the fact that you won't be able to do that forever, that gives the fact that you can do it at all extreme value. Life gains value in its fragility. And so do emotions. Ultimately, all things that are temporary have value. And technically, the more temporary something is, the more value it has. That's why we as humans, or not all humans, but a good chunk of humans, have FOMO. The fear of missing out. Because if something is temporary, it has value. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? So ultimately, that love, that passion, those feelings, even if they are not permanent, even if they are not everlasting, even if once you die, to Diodora's point, it all goes away, that doesn't necessarily mean it has no value. If anything, that means it has more. But of course, Nasiens simply cannot let this slide. He fell for the rage baiting, as they declare, I'm not going to let that happen! And they swing their hand about, transform Sponge Percival from the Sponge Percival shield into Spirit Chastiful, second form Chastiful, the spear version, and blitz right past the two beasts in order to blast Diodora. Notably, they only graze Diodora's shoulder, though. You can tell while Nasiens is angered by Diodora's actions, unless it was meant to be a miss and accidentally, Nasiens still doesn't want to kill Diodora. They don't want to harm them drastically, as they only graze their shoulder. And we see that Cabaloni announces, the giant spear from Nasiens has struck Diodora! And we see that the damage reflection kicks in. And Diodora declares, you see, the Lord is truly on my side. I'm not going to go into the whole thing about, like, what Lord is he talking about here? Like, hell, I don't know. But the thing is, we see that Diodora's damage reflection does work here. And I think it is literally because Nasiens fell for the rage bait. That sounds like the most simple and dumb and stupid way I could say it. But I think it is genuinely, Nasiens fell for the rage bait. he pays for it in taking the damage. Because he now has negative intention towards Diodora, he doesn't like what they said, and he attacked them maliciously and intentionally, the damage reflection kicked in. It is only something that responds if you hold malicious intent, and possibly malicious intent very specifically to Diodora. Like, say hypothetically, someone was fighting somebody else and Diodora was caught in the crossfire, I don't think the damage reflection would activate because it wasn't directed towards him. But since the attack was directed towards him with malicious intent, bada bing, bada boom, it now reflected. Now, of course, the question is, how will Nasiens cope with this? Because once again, it does seem to be somewhat surface level damage. It destroys their fit a little bit, but that's about it. Will Nasiens realize that ultimately they cannot do direct damage to Diodora, and will they revert back to Sponge Percival to try and knock them off? Will they try to incapacitate Diodora, and then how would that work? What will happen now? And of course, the Purgatory Beast as well. We know Nasiens has a stamina issue, which may or may not have been resolved a little bit, so there is still a whole lot left to see in this battle. Could it wrap next chapter? Possibly, but I could see this being a 3-chapter fight. Something about it, it screams 3 chapters to me just because of how much could be explored with Diodora's own magic, Nasiens' own magic, and the many interactions that could come from it. So overall, a W chapter. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave blowback in the comment section down below. I did thank you so much for watching. Remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that notification bells so you don't miss out on any news that come to the channel. Also, you're going to have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. And things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reaction to this very chapter. It's about, I think it's about like 20 or like 18 minutes long. And you can go on Patreon, check it out for as low as $1 a month. You can be a member for as low as $3 a month. And also, the link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below. You can drop 5 beans for a short video, 20 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to thank you to our sketch tier members: Greyhound, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Super Flame Zero, Glacier XZ, Zeta, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Gyomi, Yuki Ally, Buddha Uda, Azo 2404, Planet Grown, G Prosper, and Striker Man. Then I'd like to thank you to our line art tier patrons: Sean, Nirvana Igneel, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, and A+A. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our ink tier members: Fine, Austin Wimberly, A Uchiha, Carlo Alaimo, and Grim. And I'd like to give a massive thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. Then I'd like to give a and thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Joaquin Munoz and Joaquin Munoz. And finally, I gotta give the biggest, juiciest, heftiest, and most meaty, sloppiest thank you to our glorious, ultimate That Guy with a Pencil tier patron, Calvin Elder.